Bonjour, bonjour. Here I am again reporting from the Twilight Zone in the cruise. We have lost one more person. That makes a total of 5 in my population of 120,000. This is not good news. Apart from that, it is same shit, different day. Thanks to everybody who got in touch after my last video. Most encouraging. And as promised, I am doing a follow-up video to explain why I have got such a problem with the mainstream media and why we need to stop consuming it now. It's very bad for us. So, here we go. It's my contention that the media is nothing more than propaganda. If you've done your homework on Edward Bernays and Goebbels et al., you will understand what I mean. Stick with me. I'm going to explain to you why it's so bad for our minds and why we need to stop doing it. It is the only thing that will get us out of this horrible predicament we're in. Kill the fear and kill the media. That's what we've got to do. So, propaganda, as we know, has a sole purpose of impregnating your brain with a message or instructions disguised as news. Currently, this is done through images of ambulances, pictures of dead children, pictures of dead doctors, nurses, and believe me, they are completely unscrupulous. They will use images completely unrelated to the actual event. Stock pictures, random photos. They've been caught doing it time and time again. They will also use music. This reinforces the message and plays on your emotions to reinforce the message. They will use neuro-linguistic programming, using specific words or phrases such as deadly, exponential, unprecedented, experts, scientists. Now, these words are used repeatedly, and they have absolutely no bearing in any kind of evidence or reality. Well, kind of. Deadly. But how deadly? To whom is this virus deadly? A very small amount of people. Do you see what I'm saying? But it would just be blanket deadly. Okay. So the repetition of these words ensure that they are firmly programmed in. Now I'm going to give you an example from our pre-COVID situation. Think of Syria versus Saudi Arabia. You will notice that Syria is always referred to as a regime. And you will notice that Saudi Arabia is always referred to as a government. When in fact, Syria is a semi-presidential democracy, multi-party democracy. And Saudi Arabia is a totalitarian Islamic absolute monarchy. So the narrative gets fixed. It has one sole purpose, and that is to manipulate you emotionally. Usually through fear and sometimes anger, and often both, which renders you unable to maintain critical faculties. Don't get triggered. They do it to all of us all of the time. And I don't care if it's newspapers, TV news media, television programs, radio documentaries. It's happening constantly, and you need to learn to recognise it. Next, they'll offer you information. There's usually a grain of truth, but this, even though it's true, in this case it would be the endless daily death tolls, the tragic stories of dead children, dead doctors, and on and on and on. Apart from sometimes they will outright lie, and they have been caught doing this. I'm afraid. You can spot propaganda because there will be a lack of context, historical context, a lack of credible evidence or verifiable sources, and a lack of analysis and a lack of challenging the authority or government narrative. They obviously love to use sensationalism, as you know, but in this context, it could be described as terror-based mind control. I'll let that sink in. So they are terrorizing you to control your mind. This is a well-known technique because we are rendered utterly controllable under this spell, in this trance. And then they can introduce more linguistic programming. In this case, it would be stay home, the repetition of stay home, save lives, save the NHS. This is drummed in, and I'm afraid, don't get triggered, the victims will dutifully repeat these mantras unquestioningly, without question. Then they start to change the lexicon, introducing social distancing. Was that a thing before the media pumped it into your head? Self-isolation. And this reinforces the behavioural changes that they would like to implement into the society. So, what happens if someone somewhere should accidentally wake from the trance and ask some pertinent questions that the media never will? Don't worry, the media have it covered because they have the power to control the narrative. Anyone offering a different point of view, some context, some real evidence will be ignored or omitted. Now, if they somehow gain traction, they will be character assassinated or vilified as irresponsible or discredited. There might be a story about them and how they counter the narrative, but you always find the last word will be a chucked in little quote from someone more credible who completely goes against what they're saying. Now, if despite all of this, somehow they gain support and popularity, more neuro-linguistic programming will be implemented. This is in the form of slogans, okay, and name-calling, such as anti-vaxxer, climate denier, or conspiracy theorist. None of these targeted people, would refer to themselves as that thing. Okay? Anti-vaxxers would actually consider themselves or call themselves vaccine safety advocates, for example. The mainstream media can never use that term because it sounds far too credible and sensible. So it's the same trick, exactly the same trick as the regime versus government. It ensures that people will never look into their information because they don't want to be labelled in the same way, or they just believe the propaganda and assume these people are crackpots and will never take the time to have a look at their information. And this translates to real life. Oh, you're starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'd better turn my brain off and not ever listen to you. That's how you dismiss someone. You don't actually look at their information. You're starting to get the picture. So be ready for new ones to appear, and I'm predicting COVID denier. This may or may not happen, but it's the same principle. If you are questioning the validity of the government's response to this epidemic, you will be called a COVID denier. That's how it works. Nobody is denying that there is an epidemic or there are people dying or suffering because of it, but they are questioning how deadly is it? Is the response proportionate? And etc., etc. But they will just be dismissed in this way. Okay.